The Mitchell Furniture headquarters hadn't changed much in 5 years. Same weathered brick exterior, same faded sign my father had proudly installed when I was just 10 years old. But the business inside had changed dramatically, and not for the better. As I stepped into the lobby, conversations hushed. I recognized most of the faces, employees who had watched me grow up, who had attended my father's funeral 3 years ago, who had witnessed my Uncle Robert's ruthless takeover of the company afterward. Nathan, the receptionist, Linda, who had been with the company since before I was born, stared in shock. "Is that really you?" "Hello, Linda," I smiled, adjusting my tailored suit. "I have a meeting with the board." Her eyes widened. "The board? But they're expecting me," I said smoothly, though expecting might have been an overstatement. My lawyers had arranged the meeting, citing only an acquisition proposal of urgent interest to all shareholders. The boardroom was on the second floor, exactly where it had always been. Through the glass walls, I could see them already assembled. Uncle Robert at the head of the table, my cousins James and Patricia flanking him, and the 3 outside directors Robert had installed after forcing me out. They were studying documents, expressions tense. My mother had warned me not to come. "Let it go, Nathan," she had pleaded during our Sunday call. "Your father wouldn't want you consumed by this fight. The business is gone. You've built something new." She wasn't wrong about the something new part. After being forced out of Mitchell Furniture, the company my father had founded and groomed me to lead, I channeled my anger into creativity. With my inheritance and a small team of designers who had quit Mitchell in protest of my removal, I had established Nova Designs. Our eco-friendly, modular furniture had quickly captured a market that Mitchell had ignored, and within 3 years, we had grown from a garage startup to a company valued at over $200 million. But my mother was wrong about letting it go. This wasn't about revenge. It was about legacy. My father's legacy. I pushed open the boardroom door, and 6 heads turned in unison. Uncle Robert's face flushed with immediate recognition and anger. "What are you doing here?" he demanded, standing abruptly. "This meeting is for discussing the acquisition of Mitchell Furniture," I finished for him, taking a seat at the opposite end of the table. "I'm the buyer." Stunned silence filled the room. My cousin James recovered first, forcing a laugh. "That's ridiculous. Nova Designs is a niche operation. You couldn't possibly have the capital to acquire us." I slid copies of the acquisition proposal across the table. Nova Designs went public 8 months ago. Our current market cap is $340 million. Mitchell Furniture, on the other hand, has seen declining revenues for 16 consecutive quarters under current management. Your last valuation was $42 million, and that was generously optimistic. Uncle Robert snatched up the document, face darkening as he scanned the terms. "This is some kind of joke." "I've never been more serious," I replied. Nova Designs is prepared to acquire Mitchell Furniture for $45 million, a premium over current valuation. The offer expires at close of business tomorrow. "And if we refuse?" Patricia asked, her normally confident voice wavering slightly. I smiled, remembering how enthusiastically she had voted to remove me from the board 5 years ago. My own cousin, who I'd helped through business school. "That's certainly your right," I acknowledged. "But I should mention that 3 of your largest clients, Westridge Hotels, Laurel Communities, and Apex Office Solutions, have signed exclusive contracts with Nova, effective next quarter. My team just finalized the deals last week. Those 3 clients represented nearly 40% of Mitchell's current business. Without them, the company my father had built would likely collapse within a year." Robert slammed his fist on the table. "That's corporate sabotage. You deliberately targeted our clients." "I made competitive offers to companies in the free market," I corrected. "Something you should have been doing instead of selling off the company's assets to fund your vacation homes." The outside directors exchanged concerned glances. They hadn't been part of the family drama, but they understood numbers, and Mitchell's numbers had been disastrous under Robert's leadership. "We need to discuss this privately," one of them suggested. Of course, I stood buttoning my suit jacket. "You have until 5 p.m. tomorrow. I have a car waiting outside." As I turned to leave, Robert called after me, his voice a mixture of fury and disbelief. "Your father would be ashamed of you, Nathan. This isn't what he built the company for." I paused at the door, My father built this company to last generations, Uncle Robert. You're the one who turned it into a personal ATM machine. I'm just fulfilling his original vision. Outside, the late September afternoon was unusually warm. I loosened my tie, exhaling slowly as I slid into the back seat of the waiting car. "How did it go?" asked Eliza Chen, my CFO and closest advisor at Nova. She had been my father's financial controller before following me to the new company. "Exactly as expected," I replied. "Shock, outrage, and the beginning of panic." "And how did it feel?" she asked quietly. Eliza knew what this moment meant. We had discussed little else during the 6 months of careful planning that had led to this day. I considered her question as the car pulled away from the building where I had spent summers working since I was 15, where I had learned every aspect of furniture making from the ground up, where my father had suffered the heart attack that took his life at 62. It felt like coming home. The call came at 4:30 p.m. the following day. I was in Nova's design studio reviewing prototypes for our new hospitality line when my assistant interrupted. "Mr. Mitchell, the Mitchell Furniture Board is on line 1. All of them." I nodded, taking the call in my office. The speakerphone crackled with the sound of multiple people in a room. "Nathan," began Harold Watson, the senior outside director. "The board has reviewed your proposal and is prepared to accept with one condition." "I'm listening." "Robert Mitchell wishes to retain a position with the company, a senior advisory role, non-executive." I had anticipated this, my uncle's desperate attempt to save face. At 68, with no other business experience, he would struggle to find another position. His lavish lifestyle had left him with little in savings, despite the generous salary he had awarded himself while gutting my father's company. "That won't be possible," I replied firmly. "The acquisition is contingent on a complete leadership change." "However," I added, seeing an opportunity, "I am willing to offer Mr. Mitchell a 2-year consulting contract with reasonable compensation, provided he agrees to certain non-compete and non-disclosure provisions." Muffled discussion came through the speaker. I waited patiently, knowing they had no real leverage. "We accept your terms," Harold finally responded. "Our attorneys will contact yours to finalize the paperwork." "Excellent. I'll see you at the signing tomorrow." I ended the call, leaning back in my chair. Eliza appeared in the doorway. "They agreed." "They had no choice," I replied. "The company's worth more to us than to anyone else because of the client overlap and supply chain integration. Robert's finally lost, and he knows it." She studied me carefully. "Is it enough? After what they did to you?" I thought about that night 5 years ago, when my uncle had called an emergency board meeting while I was overseas checking on a supplier. How he had convinced the board that my plans to modernize the company were too risky, that my father had made a mistake in preparing me to take over. How I had returned to find myself locked out of my office, my email, my family's company. "It's not about enough," I said finally. "It's about making things right." The signing ceremony the next morning was brief and tense. Robert refused to meet my eyes as he signed the papers transferring control of Mitchell Furniture to Nova Designs. My cousins James and Patricia sat stiffly beside him, their futures suddenly uncertain. When the lawyers confirmed that all documents were in order, I stood to address the room. "Mitchell Furniture has been part of this community for over 40 years. My father built it from a single workbench in his garage into a company that employed hundreds and supported their families. That legacy matters to me." I looked directly at my uncle now. "Nova Designs will not be dismantling Mitchell Furniture or moving its operations. Instead, we'll be investing in modernizing the factory, expanding the workforce, and reestablishing the quality standards that made Mitchell a respected name in the industry." Surprise registered on several faces. They had expected vindictiveness, perhaps even closure of the business. "Additionally," I continued, "we'll be renaming the merged company Mitchell Nova to honor the heritage my father established. His name will remain on the building he built." As the room cleared, Robert lingered, approaching me with visible reluctance. He looked older than his 68 years, the strain of failing leadership etched into his face. "You didn't have to keep the Mitchell name," he said gruffly. "I didn't do it for you," I replied. "I did it for Dad. And for me. I'm a Mitchell too, remember." He nodded slowly. "Your consulting offer, is it real or just for show?" "It's real," I confirmed. 2 years, reasonable compensation. You know the production side better than most." But you'll report to the factory manager, not to me. A flash of the old pride crossed his face, then resigned acceptance. When do I start? Monday, 8 a.m. Don't be late. As he shuffled out, Eliza approached with the final set of documents. Everything's transferred. Mitchell Furniture is officially part of our company. I picked up my father's photograph from the boardroom table, the one that had washed over meetings for decades, the one Robert had relegated to a side table after taking control. I would return it to its proper place at the center of the business my father had built. Let's go talk to the employees, I said. They deserve to know their jobs are secure. The factory floor fell silent as I walked in, Eliza beside me. Dozens of faces, some familiar, some new, watched with uncertainty. These were the craftspeople who had taught me to sand wood until it was smooth as glass, to recognize quality lumber by its grain, to take pride in creating something lasting. Many of you knew my father, I began, my voice carrying across the quiet space. Jack Mitchell believed that furniture isn't just about wood and nails. It's about creating something that becomes part of a family's life. A dinner table where children do homework and celebrations happen. A bed frame that lasts long enough to be passed down to the next generation. I moved among them, making eye contact, reconnecting. When I left Mitchell Furniture 5 years ago, I carried those values with me to Nova Designs. Today, as we bring these companies together, I'm making you a promise. We will honor the Mitchell legacy of quality while embracing Nova's innovation. No jobs will be cut. In fact, we'll be expanding. Relief visibly swept through the crowd. Under Robert's leadership, they had endured rounds of layoffs, benefit reductions, and constant uncertainty. Starting next month, we'll begin modernizing this facility. We've secured contracts that will keep production at full capacity for at least the next 18 months. And I added, we're reinstating the profit-sharing program my father established, which was discontinued 5 years ago. The announcement was met with applause and a few tears from longer-tenured employees who remembered the program's impact on their families. As I concluded my remarks and people returned to work with renewed energy, an older craftsman approached, Sam Reeves, who had been my father's first employee 40 years ago. Your dad would be proud today, he said, his weathered hand extended. Not just of the business, but of how you handled everything. You did it right, Nathan. I shook his hand firmly. I learned from the best. Over the next 6 months, Mitchell Nova underwent a transformation. We maintained the traditional craftsmanship that had been Mitchell's strength while incorporating Nova's sustainable materials and modular designs. The factory expanded, adding a second shift to meet increasing demand. My uncle Robert, surprisingly, took his consulting role seriously. His knowledge of traditional production methods proved valuable, and a careful distance between us kept conflicts to a minimum. My cousins James and Patricia had declined positions with the merged company, opting instead for generous severance packages. On the anniversary of the acquisition, we held a company-wide celebration. The factory was decorated with photographs showing both companies' histories, culminating in images of recent achievements. Employees and their families mingled with executives and clients, touring the modernized facility with pride. As twilight fell, I slipped away to my father's old office, which I had preserved largely as he left it. The room was quiet, a sanctuary from the festivities outside. I thought I might find you here, my mother said from the doorway. She rarely visited the factory since my father's death, but had made an exception for today's celebration. Just taking a moment, I explained, gesturing to the worn leather chair behind the desk. I can still see him sitting there, reviewing designs, making notes in the margins. She entered, touching the wood-paneled walls with familiarity. When your father started this business, everyone told him he was crazy. Furniture manufacturing was moving overseas. No one wanted American-made anymore. She smiled at the memory. He was stubborn. Like someone else I know. I had to get it back, Mom, I said quietly, not just for Dad, but for everyone who believed in what he built. I know, she approached, straightening my tie in a maternal gesture that transcended my 35 years and CEO status. I just didn't want it to consume you, but you've done something your father never managed. What's that? You've honored the past while creating something new. Jack was so focused on building that he sometimes forgot to innovate. You found the balance. Through the window, we could see the celebration continuing in the factory yard. Employees laughed together. Their children played on the newly installed playground equipment, and the Mitchell Nova logo. Combining my father's original design with our modern aesthetic illuminated the evening. "There's one more thing I'm doing," I told her, opening my desk drawer to retrieve a document. "The Robert Mitchell Craftsmanship Scholarship for employees' children who want to study design or manufacturing." She raised an eyebrow in surprise. "Named after your uncle? The man who pushed you out?" I shrugged. "He's family. Complicated, flawed family, but still family. Dad would have found a way to make peace." My mother studied me for a long moment, then nodded in understanding. "Your father built furniture that lasted generations. You're building something even more durable, a legacy of reconciliation." As we rejoined the celebration outside, I spotted my Uncle Robert at the edge of the crowd, observing rather than participating. Our eyes met briefly, and he gave a small, acknowledging nod. Not friendship, not yet forgiveness, but recognition of what had been lost, what had been regained, and what might still be built. The family business had come full circle, not through revenge, but through something more powerful, the stubborn insistence that what had been broken could be made whole again, perhaps even stronger at the mended places, just like the finest furniture my father had ever crafted.